The galaxy was vast, cold, and indifferent. Billions of stars burned in silence, their light stretching across unimaginable distances. Somewhere in this endless expanse, a cry for help echoed through space, a faint pulse of energy carrying desperation and hope. On Earth, humanity had long since earned a reputation among alien civilizations as Deathworlders. It wasn't just because their planet was harsh, with unpredictable weather, dangerous wildlife, and an environment that could turn hostile at any moment. It was because humans themselves were survivors. They had endured plagues, wars, natural disasters, and even the brink of extinction multiple times throughout their history. Each time they came back stronger, more determined, and more resourceful than before. When other species looked at Earth, they didn't see just a planet. They saw a race hardened by adversity, capable of overcoming anything thrown at them. It was during one of these quiet nights on Earth when the signal arrived. Deep within the confines of Lunar Station Gamma, a massive observatory orbiting the Moon, the sensors picked up something unusual. A pattern emerged amidst the cosmic noise, a series of repeating pulses too deliberate to be random. Dr. Yoonji Park, a young astrophysicist known for her sharp mind and relentless curiosity, was the first to notice it. She sat hunched over her console, her dark hair tied back into a messy bun, her eyes glued to the screen displaying rows of data. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she ran algorithms to analyze the signal. It didn't take long for her to realize this wasn't some stray transmission or interference. It was intentional. "Admiral," she called out, her voice steady despite the excitement bubbling inside her. "You need to see this." Admiral Dae-hyun Kim stood nearby, leaning against a railing while reviewing reports on his tablet. He was a man who commanded respect without needing to demand it. Tall and broad-shouldered, he carried himself with an air of calm authority. His face bore the marks of years spent leading humanity's fleets through countless battles, yet there was a kindness in his eyes that hinted at a deeper sense of purpose. "What is it, Dr. Park?" he asked, walking over to her station. Yoonji pointed at the screen. "We've detected a signal. Clearly artificial. It's coming from outside our galaxy." She hesitated for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "It's a distress call." Dae-hyun frowned. Humanity had encountered alien life before, but most interactions had been cautious, even tense. Alien species often viewed humans with suspicion, seeing them as unpredictable and dangerous. But a distress call? That was different. This wasn't diplomacy or trade, it was survival. "Can you decode it?" he asked. "I'm working on it," Yoonji replied, already typing furiously. "But based on the frequency modulation, I think it contains coordinates." As the hours passed, the team worked tirelessly to decipher the message. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Yoonji let out a triumphant gasp. "Got it," she exclaimed. "The signal includes coordinates to a system about 200 light-years away. And there's more." She paused, her expression growing, serious. "It mentions an attack. Something or someone is destroying their world." Dae-hyun straightened, his jaw tightening. "Whoever sent this needs help. We can't ignore it." Word of the discovery quickly reached Earth's United Galactic Council, the governing body responsible for humanity's interstellar affairs. The council convened immediately, filling the grand chamber with heated debate. Some argued that responding to the distress call would be reckless, potentially drawing humanity into a conflict they couldn't win. Others believed it was an opportunity to prove humanity's strength and establish alliances with alien species. "The risks are enormous," said Councillor Min-soo, a cautious politician known for his conservative views. "We don't know who sent this signal or what kind of enemy they're facing. For all we know, this could be a trap." Councillor Ji-yoon, a fiery advocate for exploration and cooperation, countered him. "And if it's not? If innocent lives are being wiped out while we sit here arguing, what does that say about us? About humanity?" The room fell silent as all eyes turned to Admiral Dae-hyun. As the leader of Earth's space fleet, his opinion carried significant weight. He stepped forward, his voice firm but measured. "This isn't just about politics or strategy. This is about who we are as a species. Yes, we've faced hardships. Yes, we've made mistakes. But we've also shown time and again that we're willing to fight for what's right. If we turn our backs, now we'll lose more than a chance to help. We'll lose a part of ourselves." His words struck a chord. After much deliberation, the Council voted to send the Armada, a colossal fleet of warships equipped with cutting-edge technology born from humanity's trials and triumphs. Dae-hyun would lead the mission personally, accompanied by Dr. Yoon-ji, Park and a crew of Earth's finest soldiers and scientists. Preparations began immediately. The Armada consisted of dozens of vessels, each designed for a specific role: destroyers armed with plasma cannons, carriers loaded with fighter jets, supply ships stocked with resources, and medical frigates ready to treat the wounded. Every ship gleamed under the artificial lights of the orbital dockyards, their hulls emblazoned with the emblem of Earth, a globe encircled by stars. As the fleet prepared to depart, Yoon-ji couldn't shake the feeling of unease gnawing at her. She had spent her entire career studying the cosmos, searching for signs of intelligent life beyond Earth. Now that she had found it, the reality was far more daunting than she had imagined. What awaited them at those coordinates? Would they find allies or enemies? Her thoughts were interrupted by Admiral Dae-hyun, who approached her with a reassuring smile. "Nervous?" he asked. "A little," she admitted. "What if we're walking into something we can't handle?" He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then we'll handle it together. Remember, we're Deathworlders. We don't give up." With that, the Armada launched into the void, its engines roaring like thunder as it pierced through the atmosphere. Ahead lay the unknown, a journey into uncharted territory filled with danger and possibility. Days turned into weeks as the fleet traveled through hyperspace, the stars blurring into streaks of light outside the observation windows. The crew remained vigilant, running drills and simulations to prepare for whatever might lie ahead. Morale was high, fueled by a mix of anticipation and determination. Finally, they reached the destination indicated by the distress signal. Emerging from hyperspace, the fleet found itself in a star system unlike anything they had ever seen. At its center was a dying sun, its light dim and red, casting an eerie glow over the surrounding planets. One of them, a rocky world covered in shimmering crystalline structures, appeared to be the source of the signal. "That must be their homeworld," Yoon-ji said, pointing at the planet on the main view screen. Before they could make contact, however, something unexpected happened. A fleet of alien ships emerged from behind the planet, their designs sleek and unfamiliar. They were smaller than the human vessels, but radiated an aura of menace. "Unknown contacts approaching," announced Lieutenant Choi, the tactical officer. "They're scanning us." "Hold your fire," Dae-hyun ordered, raising a hand. "Let's see what they want." A communication channel opened, and a holographic image materialized on the bridge. It depicted a tall, slender being with iridescent skin that shimmered like liquid metal. Its eyes glowed softly, and its voice, though translated through advanced software, carried a tone of urgency. "You have answered our call," the alien said. "For that, we are grateful. But you must act quickly. The Krith Dominion approaches. They will show no mercy." The mention of the Krith sent a chill through the room. Humanity had heard rumors of this ruthless empire, known for conquering weaker species and stripping their worlds bare. If these aliens spoke the truth, then the situation was dire indeed. "We'll do everything we can to help," Dae-hyun replied. "Tell us what we're up against." Thus began humanity's first encounter with the Zorathians, a peaceful race fighting for their very existence. Little did they know, this alliance would test their courage, ingenuity, and resolve in ways they could never have imagined. The Zorathians were unlike any species humanity had encountered before. Their crystalline structures, which covered their homeworld like a shimmering blanket, reflected the dim red light of their dying sun. The alien ships that now hovered near, the human fleet, were sleek and elegant, their surfaces smooth and metallic, almost as if they were crafted from liquid silver. Yet, despite their beauty, there was an undeniable sense of fragility about them. These were not warriors but thinkers, artists and dreamers. They had built a civilization based on harmony and knowledge, not conquest or war. Admiral Dae-hyun Kim stood on the bridge of the Aegis Dawn, his flagship, observing the Zorathian vessels through the view screen. His mind raced with questions. Could these beings truly hold their own against the Krith Dominion? And even if they couldn't, how far was humanity willing to go to protect them? Dr. Yoonji Park stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the holographic image of the Zorathian ambassador projected in the center of the room. The alien introduced himself as Kylan, and though his voice carried a calm authority, it was clear he was struggling to mask his fear. His glowing eyes darted between the human officers, searching for signs of trust or betrayal. "The Krith have already devastated 2 of our outer colonies," Kylan explained, his tone heavy with sorrow. "They seek to harvest the energy, crystals that sustain our world. If they succeed, Zora Prime will be consumed entirely." Daehyun nodded slowly. He understood the stakes, but also knew that humanity couldn't afford to act blindly. "We need more information," he said firmly. "Tell us everything you know about the Krith, their weapons, tactics, numbers, anything that can help us prepare." Kylan hesitated, then gestured toward one of his aides. Another hologram appeared, this time showing images of massive warships, bristling with cannons, swarms of drones, and towering mechs armed with devastating plasma blades. The sight sent a ripple of unease through the human crew. These weren't just invaders. They were conquerors, bred for domination. "They call themselves the Krith Dominion," Kylan continued. "Their leader, Warlord Vraxus, believes all. Weaker species exist only to serve the strong. They have already wiped out countless worlds in their quest for resources." Yoonji leaned forward, studying the holograms intently. "Their technology is advanced," she murmured, "but it's aggressive, designed for destruction rather than creation." She turned to Daehyun. "If we're going to fight them, we'll need to adapt quickly." Daehyun agreed. Humanity's strength had always lain in its ability to adapt, to take whatever tools were available and turn them into something better. But adapting would require cooperation with the Zorathians, and that was easier said than done. Tensions ran high during the initial meetings. The Zorathians were wary of humans, viewing them as unpredictable and volatile. Stories of Earth's history, its wars, its environmental collapses, its relentless drive to survive at all costs, had spread throughout the galaxy, painting humanity as both resilient and dangerous. Kylan and his advisors questioned whether allying with such a species was wise. For their part, the humans found the Zorathians frustratingly passive. While the aliens spoke eloquently of peace and unity, they seemed reluctant to commit to anything resembling a battle plan. When Daehyun proposed joint training exercises to prepare for the inevitable clash with the Krith, Kylan balked. "We are not fighters," Kylan insisted. "Our people value life above all else. To engage in violence goes against everything we stand for." "That's admirable," Daehyun replied, keeping his frustration in check. "But ideals won't save your planet. If you want to survive, you'll need to fight, even if it means stepping outside your comfort zone." It wasn't until disaster struck that the fragile alliance began to solidify. During one of the strategy sessions aboard the Aegis Dawn, alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. A swarm of Krith stealth cruisers had slipped past the fleet's perimeter undetected and launched a surprise attack on the meeting site. Chaos erupted as explosions rocked the docking bay where the Zorathian delegation was stationed. Smoke filled the corridors, and panicked shouts echoed over the comms. Daehyun sprang into action, barking orders to his crew. "Seal off the affected sections. Deploy countermeasures. Get those civilians to safety." Lieutenant Choi, the tactical officer, worked furiously at his station, directing the fleet's defenses. "Sir, the Krith ships are targeting our engines. We need to move now." Daehyun clenched his jaw. "Not until everyone's secure. Divert power to the shields and hold position." Meanwhile, Yoonji grabbed a portable scanner and rushed toward the chaos. She knew the Zorathians wouldn't last long without protection. As she reached the docking bay, she saw Killin and several of his aides pinned down behind a shattered console, enemy drones circling overhead like vultures. "Stay low," she shouted, crouching beside them. Using the scanner, she identified weak points in the drone's armor. Pulling a small EMP device from her belt, a standard tool for disabling rogue tech, she activated it and tossed it into the air. A burst, of electromagnetic energy surged outward, frying the circuits of the nearest drones and causing them to plummet to the ground. Kylan stared at her in shock. "You saved us." Yunji gave him a grim smile. "Don't thank me yet. We're not out of this." Back on the bridge, Dae-hyun coordinated a counterattack. The human fleet unleashed a barrage of plasma torpedoes, forcing the Krith cruisers to retreat. It was a costly victory. Several ships sustained heavy damage, and dozens of lives were lost. But it bought them precious time. When the dust settled, Kylan and his surviving advisors emerged from the wreckage, shaken but alive. For the first time, they looked at the humans with something other than suspicion. Gratitude flickered in Kylan's glowing eyes as he addressed Dae-hyun. "You risked your lives for us," he said quietly. "Why?" Dae-hyun met his gaze steadily. "Because no one deserves to die like that. Not your people, not ours. We're stronger together, Kylan. Let us help you." The moment marked a turning point in the alliance. The Zorathians agreed to participate in joint training exercises, albeit reluctantly. Over the next few days, humans and Zorathians worked side by side, learning each other's strengths and weaknesses. The differences between the two species became apparent almost immediately. Human soldiers relied on brute force and improvisation, using sheer determination to overcome obstacles. They were adaptable, resourceful, and unafraid to take risks. In contrast, the Zorathians favored precision and strategy, employing advanced energy-based weapons and non-lethal tactics whenever possible. Their approach was methodical, almost artistic, reflecting their culture's emphasis on harmony and balance. Among the trainees was Soo-min Lee, a young pilot who had joined the space fleet after losing her family in a previous alien invasion. Soo-min was fiercely independent, with a fiery temper that often got her into trouble. But beneath her tough exterior lay a deep sense of loyalty and a desire to make a difference. During one exercise, Soo-min found herself paired with a Zorathian warrior named Rhinus. Unlike many of his kin, Rhinus struggled with the concept of combat. His upbringing had taught him to value life above all else, and the idea of harming another being, even in self-defense, weighed heavily on him. At first, their partnership was fraught with tension. Soo-min grew frustrated with Rhinus's hesitation, while Rhinus felt overwhelmed by her aggressive instincts. But as they trained together, they began to understand each other. Soo-min learned to appreciate Rhinus's focus and discipline, while Rhinus discovered that protecting others sometimes required making difficult choices. One evening, after a particularly grueling session, Soo-min sat with Rhinus in the mess hall. The room buzzed with conversation as humans and Zorathians mingled, sharing stories and laughter. Despite the language barrier, bonds were forming, small acts of kindness bridging the gap between two vastly different cultures. "You're getting better," Soo-min said, nudging Rhinus playfully. "Maybe you'll actually hit something next time." Rhinus tilted his head, his expression thoughtful. "I do not wish to harm anyone, even in training. But I see now that my reluctance puts others at risk. If I am to protect my people and yours, I must learn." Soo-min softened, sensing the weight of his words. "It's not easy," she admitted. "I've been angry for a long time, about my family, about everything. But fighting isn't just about anger. It's about protecting what matters." Rhinus nodded slowly. "Perhaps we can find a way to fight without losing ourselves." Their conversation marked the beginning of a bond that would become a symbol of unity between the two species. Together, they pushed each other to grow, balancing aggression with restraint, strength with compassion. While the soldiers trained, Yunji worked tirelessly to integrate human and Zorathian technologies. Zorathian's energy-based weapons were elegant, but lacked the raw power of humanity's plasma cannons. By combining elements of both, she created hybrid systems that amplified their effectiveness without compromising efficiency. Her breakthrough came when she developed a new type of shield generator capable of deflecting both physical projectiles and energy blasts. The device was compact enough to be installed on individual fighters, giving pilots an edge in dogfights. When she presented her invention to Dae-hyun, his eyes lit up with pride. The night before the battle, the air aboard the Aegis Dawn was thick with anticipation. Crew members moved through the corridors with purpose, their faces etched with determination. The human-Zorathian alliance had trained hard, forged new bonds, and prepared as best they could, but no amount of preparation could fully ease the weight of what lay ahead. Somewhere beyond the red glow of the dying sun, the Krith Dominion loomed, a relentless force driven by greed and conquest. Dr. Yunji Park sat in her lab, surrounded by glowing screens and scattered notes. Her hands hovered over a holographic interface, adjusting parameters on the hybrid shield generator she had developed. Though proud of her work, she couldn't shake the gnawing doubt in the back of her mind. Would it be enough? Could humanity's ingenuity truly stand against an empire that had crushed countless worlds? Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. She looked up to see Admiral Dae-Hyun Kim standing there, his expression calm but serious. "Still working?" he asked, stepping inside. Yunji nodded, gesturing to the prototype on the table. "I'm tweaking the energy flow. If we can optimize it further, the shields might hold longer under sustained fire." Dae-Hyun studied the device for a moment before meeting her gaze. "You've done incredible work, Yunji. Don't push yourself too hard. We'll need you sharp tomorrow." "I know," she replied, managing a faint smile. "But I keep thinking about the Zorathians, their world, their people. If we fail—" He placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice firm, yet reassuring. "We won't fail. Not while we still have breath in our bodies. Remember why we're here. To protect those who can't protect themselves. That's what being Deathworlders is all about." His words lingered in her mind long after he left. Yunji returned to her work, fueled not just by logic and science, but by a deeper sense of purpose. This wasn't just about technology. It was about hope. Elsewhere on the ship, Sumin Lee and Rhinus stood together in the simulator bay, running through one last training exercise. The room buzzed with the hum of machinery as holographic projections of Krith fighters swarmed around them. Sumin's hands danced across the controls of her fighter jet, weaving through enemy fire with practiced precision. Beside her, Rhinus piloted a Zorathian interceptor, its sleek design gliding gracefully through the chaos. "Watch your six!" Sumin called out, firing a burst of plasma torpedoes at an incoming drone. Sparks flew as the target exploded into fragments of light. Rhinus responded by deploying a pulse wave from his ship's energy cannon, disabling several drones at once. His movements were deliberate and controlled, a stark contrast to Sumin's aggressive style. Together they formed a seamless team, her boldness complementing his precision. As the simulation ended, the two emerged from their cockpits, breathing heavily but smiling. They had come a long way since their first awkward attempts at cooperation. What started as mutual frustration had blossomed into mutual respect, and perhaps something more. "You're getting better," Sumin said, clapping Rhinus on the back. "Almost makes me feel like we actually have a shot at this." Rhinus tilted his head, his shimmering skin catching the dim light. "Almost?" she laughed, punching him lightly on the arm. "Hey, optimism is important. Keeps us from losing our minds." For a brief moment, they allowed themselves to relax, sharing jokes and stories about their respective cultures. It was easy to forget in moments like these that war loomed just hours away, but the reality was impossible to ignore for long. Back on Zora Prime, Kylan and his advisors worked feverishly to evacuate civilians to underground shelters. The crystalline cities sparkled under the dim red sunlight, their beauty bittersweet against the backdrop of impending destruction. Children clung to their parents, wide-eyed with fear, while elders prayed silently for deliverance. Kylan walked among his people, offering words of comfort and reassurance. Despite his earlier doubts about humanity, he now felt a glimmer of hope. The humans' bravery and resourcefulness had earned his trust, and he knew that without their help, Zora Prime would already be lost. "We must remain strong," he told a group of frightened citizens. "Our allies will fight for us, but we must also do our part. Protect yourselves, protect each other, and remember, we are not alone." His words seemed to calm some, though others remained visibly shaken. Kylan understood their fear. He felt it too, deep in his core. But as a leader, he couldn't afford to show weakness. He had to believe, not just in his own people, but in the fragile alliance they had formed. Meanwhile, aboard the Aegis Dawn, intelligence officers pored over data captured from the earlier skirmish with the Krith. Lieutenant Choi, the tactical officer, led the effort, analyzing every detail of the enemy's tactics and technology. What they discovered was both enlightening and terrifying. "They're ruthless," Choi reported during a briefing with Dae-hyun and his senior staff. "Their ships are equipped with advanced cloaking devices, making them nearly invisible until they strike. And their primary weapon, the Void Harbinger, is unlike anything we've ever seen." On the main view screen, a schematic of the superweapon appeared. It was a massive construct, resembling a colossal cannon mounted on a mobile platform. According to intercepted transmissions, the Void Harbinger was capable of destabilizing entire planets, collapsing their cores, and rendering them uninhabitable. Yoonji leaned forward, her brow furrowed. "If they use that thing on Zora Prime, it's over. There won't be anything left to save." Dae-hyun clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. "Then we stop them before they get the chance. Do we have any intel on where they're keeping?" Choi nodded grimly. "It's stationed near the heart of their fleet, guarded by their strongest ships. Taking it out won't be easy, but it's possible." Dae-hyun turned to his team, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "Here's the plan. We'll divide the fleet into 3 groups. Group 1 will engage the main Krith forces, drawing their attention away from Zora Prime. Group 2 will escort bombers tasked with destroying the Void Harbinger. And Group 3..." He paused, locking eyes with each member of his crew. "Group 3 will go straight for Warlord Vraxis himself. If we can take him down, we might break their morale and turn the tide of the battle." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the enormity of the task ahead. No one spoke, but the resolve in their eyes said everything that needed to be said. Later that evening, Dae-hyun found himself staring out of an observation window, watching the stars streak past as the fleet approached the edge of the system. His mind wandered to the battles he had fought, the lives he had lost, and the choices he had made along the way. This mission felt different somehow, not just because of the stakes, but because of the alliances they had forged. He thought about Yoonji, whose brilliance had given them a fighting chance, about Su-min and Rhenus, who represented the unity between 2 vastly different species, about the Zorathians, whose peaceful nature belied an inner strength few had expected, and finally, about the Krith, the embodiment of everything humanity had fought so hard to overcome. The Krith Dominion was led by Warlord Vraxis, a towering figure clad in black armor adorned with jagged spikes. His reputation preceded him, a brutal tactician who viewed weaker species as tools to be used and discarded. Under his rule, the Krith had conquered countless worlds, enslaving or exterminating anyone who resisted. To Vraxis, the concept of mercy was a weakness, a flaw to be eradicated. But Dae-hyun knew better. Mercy wasn't a weakness. It was a choice to protect, to uplift, to give others a chance to thrive. That was the difference between humanity and the Krith, and it was a difference worth fighting for. As the fleet entered the final stretch toward the battlefield, Dae-hyun addressed his crew one last time. Standing on the bridge, flanked by Yoonji, Su-min, and Rhenus, he spoke with quiet conviction. "Tomorrow we face an enemy unlike any we've encountered before. They are powerful, ruthless, and determined to destroy everything we hold dear. But let me remind you of something. We are Deathworlders. We don't back down. We don't give up. We adapt. We overcome. And we prevail." His words echoed through the ship, igniting a fire in the hearts of everyone who heard them. For the first time in days, the tension gave way to a shared sense of purpose. They weren't just soldiers or scientists. They were guardians, united by a common cause. The countdown began. Hours turned into minutes, and soon the fleet reached the designated coordinates. On the horizon, the Krith Armada came into view, a vast sea of dark ships bristling with weapons, their menacing forms blotting out the stars. "This is it," Dae-hyun said, gripping the railing tightly. "Let's show them what happens when you mess with Earth's allies." With that, the battle began. The days leading up to the battle were filled with tension, but also with purpose. Humanity and the Zorathians worked tirelessly side by side, preparing for the inevitable clash with the Krith Dominion. The alliance was still fragile, but every Passing hour brought them closer together, not just as allies, but as friends. On the surface of Zora Prime, training exercises became a daily routine. Human soldiers and Zorathian warriors trained in pairs, learning to combine their unique strengths into something greater than the sum of its parts. For many, it was an eye-opening experience. Humans marveled at the precision and elegance of Zorathian combat techniques, while the Zorathians were awestruck by humanity's raw determination and adaptability. Among the trainees, Sumin Lee and Rinus continued to shine as an unlikely duo. Their partnership had evolved from cautious cooperation to seamless teamwork. Sumin's fiery instincts complemented Rinus's calm discipline, creating a balance that neither could achieve alone. During one exercise, they faced off against a simulated Krith mech, a towering machine armed with plasma blades and heavy armor. While Sumin darted around the mech, drawing its attention and peppering it with shots from her rifle, Rinus used his energy weapon to disable its joints, bringing the massive construct crashing to the ground. "You're getting better at this," Sumin said afterward, wiping sweat from her brow. "Almost makes me feel like we actually have a shot." Rinus tilted his head, his shimmering skin catching the dim light of Zora Prime's dying sun. "It is strange," he admitted. "To fight goes against everything I have been taught. But if it means protecting my people, and yours, I will learn." Their bond grew stronger with each passing day, becoming a symbol of unity between the two species. Other soldiers began to emulate their partnership, blending human aggression with Zorathian precision. Even Kylan, the Zorathian ambassador, noticed the change. He watched from the sidelines as humans and Zorathians sparred, practiced, and strategized together. "This is what we needed," Kylan said to Admiral Daehyun Kim during one of their briefings. "Not just weapons or ships, but trust. Your people have shown us that survival sometimes requires sacrifice." Daehyun nodded, his expression thoughtful. "We've all got something to lose, Kylan. That's why we fight. To protect what matters." Dr. Yoonji Park spent most of her time in her lab aboard the Aegis Dawn, working on ways to integrate human and Zorathian technologies. Her hybrid shield generator was already proving effective, but she wasn't satisfied. She wanted to push further, to create innovations that could give the Alliance a decisive edge. One breakthrough came when she combined Zorathian energy conduits with human plasma cannons. The result was a weapon system capable of firing concentrated bursts of energy that could penetrate even the toughest Krith armor. Yoonji called it the Pulse Cannon, and after successful tests, it was quickly installed on several key ships in the fleet. But her biggest challenge lay in developing countermeasures for the Krith's cloaking technology. The enemy's ability to remain invisible until the last moment made them incredibly dangerous. Yoonji knew that without a way to detect their ships, the Alliance would be at a severe disadvantage. She spent long hours poring over data, running simulations, and testing prototypes. Finally, inspiration struck. By modifying the sensors used in Earth's early asteroid mining operations, she created a detection grid capable of identifying fluctuations in energy signatures, essentially rendering the Krith cloaks useless within a certain range. When she presented her invention to Admiral Daehyun, his eyes lit up with pride. "This could change everything," he said, examining the device. "Good work, Dr. Park." Yoonji smiled faintly but remained focused. "It's just the beginning. We'll need more innovations like this if we're going to stand a chance." Against the Krith. Her dedication inspired others. Engineers and scientists from both species began collaborating in ways no one had anticipated. Together, they developed new tools, tactics, and strategies. The Alliance was becoming more than just a coalition. It was a fusion of cultures, ideas, and strengths. As the training intensified, so did the sense of camaraderie. Meals in the mess hall turned into lively gatherings where humans and Zorathians shared stories, laughter, and food. Despite the language barrier, bonds formed quickly through gestures, expressions, and shared experiences. Sumin found herself sitting next to Rinus one evening, sharing a plate of Earth-style noodles. She had grown fond of the Zorathian warrior, appreciating his quiet wisdom and unwavering sense of duty. "You know," she said between bites, "you're not half bad for someone who didn't want to fight." Rinus tilted his head, his glowing eyes reflecting amusement. "And you are surprisingly patient for someone so..." Intense, she laughed, nudging him playfully. Hey, don't push your luck. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of cheering from across the room. A group of human soldiers and Zorathian warriors had gathered around a makeshift game board, playing a strategy game that combined elements of chess and a traditional Zorathian pastime. The mix of rules and pieces created chaotic, yet fascinating matches, drawing crowds of spectators. Want to join? Sumin asked, gesturing toward the game. Rhinus hesitated, then nodded. Why not? Perhaps I can teach you some patience. Or maybe I'll teach you how to win, she shot back with a grin. As they joined the game, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Laughter and friendly banter filled the air, momentarily easing the weight of the looming battle. For a brief time, the war felt distant, a problem for another day. Despite the growing unity, there were moments of doubt. Some Zorathians still struggled with the idea of violence, questioning whether allying with humans was truly the right path. Others worried that even with the alliance, they stood little chance against the Krith's overwhelming power. Kailan addressed these concerns during a meeting with his advisors. I understand your fears, he said, his voice steady but compassionate. But fear cannot guide us now. The humans have shown us courage, ingenuity, and strength. If we are to survive, we must embrace those qualities, not just in them, but in ourselves. His words resonated deeply, helping to quell doubts and strengthen resolve. Slowly but surely, the Zorathians began to see themselves not as victims, but as warriors fighting for their future. Back aboard the Aegis Dawn, Admiral Dae-hyun convened a final strategy session. The fleet was ready, the weapons were primed, and the plan was set. But Dae-hyun knew that preparation alone wouldn't win the battle. What mattered most was the spirit of the alliance, the belief that together they could overcome anything. We've done everything we can to prepare, he told his officers and Zorathian counterparts, but preparation isn't enough. What will win this fight is our unity. Humans and Zorathians standing shoulder to shoulder fighting for a common cause. That's our strength. Kailan stepped forward, his shimmering form radiating quiet determination. Your courage inspires us, Admiral. Whatever comes next, know that we stand with you. With those words, the alliance was sealed, not just in strategy, but in spirit. The stage was set for the greatest challenge either species had ever faced. The Krith were coming, and the fate of Zora Prime hung in the balance. The Krith Dominion arrived without warning, their massive fleet emerging from the void like a storm cloud blotting out the stars. The red glow of Zora Prime's dying sun illuminated their dark ships, each one bristling with weapons and radiating menace. It was a sight that sent shivers down even the bravest spines. On the bridge of the Aegis Dawn, Admiral Dae-hyun Kim stood tall, his eyes fixed on the view screen as the enemy armada filled the horizon. His hands gripped the railing tightly, but his voice remained calm and steady. This is it, he said to his crew. Stay sharp. Follow the plan. Behind him, Dr. Yoonji Park monitored the detection grid she had developed, her fingers flying across the console as she tracked the Krith ships. Her invention worked perfectly, revealing the cloaked vessels that would otherwise have remained invisible. One by one, the enemy positions lit up on the tactical display, giving the Alliance a crucial advantage. Enemy fleet confirmed, Lieutenant Choi announced, his tone clipped and professional. They're moving into attack formation. Estimated. Time to engagement, 5 minutes. Dae-hyun nodded. Group 1, prepare to engage. Group 2, hold position until further notice. Group 3, stand by for deployment. He turned to Yoonji. How are the shields holding? They're stable, for now, she replied, her brow furrowed in concentration. But if they focus fire on any single ship, we'll lose it. We won't let that happen, Dae-hyun said firmly. Choi, distribute our forces evenly. Keep them spread out. We can't afford to cluster. Yes, sir. As the orders were relayed, the human Zorathian fleet sprang into action. The ships moved with precision, forming a defensive perimeter around Zora Prime. Plasma cannons hummed with energy, ready to unleash devastation upon the invaders. Pilots climbed into their fighters, their hearts pounding with anticipation. This was the moment they had trained for, the moment they would prove themselves. The first wave of Krith ships launched an assault, sending swarms of drones and missiles hurtling toward the Alliance fleet. Explosions erupted across the battlefield, as shields absorbed the impact, glowing brighter with each hit. The humans returned fire with devastating salvos of plasma torpedoes, their shots finding their marks with deadly accuracy. Su-Min Lee led her squadron of fighter jets into the fray, weaving through enemy fire with practiced skill. Her cockpit shook violently as blasts rocked her ship, but she gritted her teeth and pressed forward. Beside her, Rinnis flew his Zorathian interceptor, its sleek design slicing through the chaos like a blade. Together, they formed a deadly duo, picking off enemy drones and clearing paths for reinforcements. "This is insane!" Su-Min shouted over the comms, her voice tinged with exhilaration. "How many of these things are there?" "Too many," Rinnis replied, his tone calm despite the carnage around them. "Focus on the larger ships. If we disable their command centers, the smaller units will falter." "Got it," Su-Min said, banking hard to avoid a missile. She lined up her sights on a nearby cruiser and fired a burst of torpedoes. The ship's shields flared brightly before collapsing under the barrage, leaving it vulnerable to follow-up attacks. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human soldiers fought with ferocity, their determination unmatched. Zorathian warriors contributed their own strengths, using energy-based weapons to disable enemy systems and create openings for their allies. Despite the overwhelming odds, the Alliance held firm, refusing to yield an inch. Back on Zora Prime, Kylan and his people watched the battle unfold from underground shelters. The crystalline cities above shimmered under the dim red sunlight, their beauty marred by the scars of war. Explosions echoed in the distance, shaking the ground beneath their feet. Kylan clenched his fists, his glowing eyes reflecting both fear and resolve. He had placed his trust in humanity, and now he could only hope that trust would be rewarded. Around him, civilians huddled together, praying silently for deliverance. Children clung to their parents, wide-eyed with terror, while elders whispered, "Words of encouragement." "We must remain strong," Killen told the crowd, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "Our allies fight for us. They risk their lives to protect ours. Let us honor their sacrifice by staying safe and keeping faith." His words seemed to calm some, though others remained visibly shaken. Kylan understood their fear. He felt it, too deep in his core. But as a leader, he couldn't afford to show weakness. He had to believe, not just in his own people, but in the fragile alliance they had formed. Amidst the chaos, Group 2 prepared to execute its mission, destroying the Void Harbinger. The superweapon loomed near the heart of the Krith fleet, guarded by their strongest ships. Bombers equipped with hybrid pulse cannons lined up for the assault, their pilots exchanging nervous glances. "Remember the plan," the squadron leader reminded them. "Stick close, watch your sixes, and don't stop until you reach the target." Yunji monitored the operation from the Aegis Dawn, her heart racing as she watched the bombers weave through enemy fire. The Void Harbinger was a monstrous construct, its barrel-like structure gleaming ominously in the light of the dying sun. If activated, it would spell doom for Zora Prime, and possibly Earth as well. "They're almost there," she murmured, her eyes glued to the screen. "Come on!" Suddenly, a swarm of Krith fighters intercepted the bombers, forcing them into evasive maneuvers. Explosions lit up the darkness as ships collided and fell, their wreckage drifting lifelessly through space. One bomber after another was lost, but the survivors pressed on, driven by a shared sense of purpose. Finally, the lead bomber broke through the defenses and unleashed its payload directly into the Void Harbinger's core. A blinding flash of light engulfed the area as the weapon detonated, sending shockwaves rippling through the battlefield. Cheers erupted across the Alliance fleet, but the victory came at a cost. Many lives had been lost, including close friends of Dae-Hyun and Yunji. Despite the loss of their superweapon, the Krith showed no signs of retreat. Their flagship, a colossal vessel commanded by Warlord Vraxis himself, moved into position, unleashing a devastating barrage of plasma fire. The Aegis Dawn shuddered under the assault, its shields straining to hold. "We can't take much more of this," Choi shouted, his voice tight with urgency. "Divert all available power to the shields," Dae-Hyun ordered. "Hold steady, Yunji." worked frantically at her station, rerouting energy reserves to reinforce the failing barriers. Sweat dripped from her forehead as she fought to keep the ship intact. For a moment, it seemed like they might not make it. But then, reinforcements arrived. Group 3, led by Dae-hyun himself, emerged from hyperspace behind the Krith flagship. Their sudden appearance caught the enemy off guard, allowing Group 1 to regroup and launch a counterattack. The tide of the battle began to turn, with the Alliance gaining ground against the invaders. As the fighting raged on, Su-min and Rhinus found themselves face-to-face with a Krith mech, a towering machine armed with plasma blades and heavy armor. Its pilot, a hulking figure clad in black, sneered at them through the cockpit window. "You think you stand a chance?" The Krith growled, his voice distorted by static. "You're nothing but insects," Su-min snarled, her hands tightening on the controls. "We'll see about that." With Rhinus covering her back, she darted around the mech, firing bursts of plasma torpedoes to draw its attention. Meanwhile, Rhinus targeted its joints, disabling its movements piece by piece. The mech staggered, its once imposing form reduced to a smoking wreck. Before they could celebrate, however, another wave of Krith ships appeared on the horizon. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, the Alliance truly believed they could win.